So, Kapitel 11, Chapter 11. Okay. Today we are going to be talking about Vergangenheit. How do we try that word? Vergangenheit.
Vergangenheit.
Means past tense. Okay? There's more than one kind of past tense. Okay. So one kind is called the Präteritum. You don't need to be able to pronounce it, just recognize it. And the other kind is called the Perfekt. For the most part, we're going to be focusing on the Perfekt for right now. Okay. We will get into the Präteritum as well this year, because you have to know it when you start off level 3. That's just a good thing to know in general. Okay. All right. So, talk about the Präteritum first. Okay. The Präteritum. Okay. Sometimes it's called the Imperfekt. Like if you use, I don't know if you've ever used one of these before, but back on the bottom shelf down by Michaela, there's 501 German verb books. Has anybody ever used one of those? If you look up a verb, it has 501 of them in there. If you look up a verb, it tells you how to conjugate it in all the different tenses. Okay, so it's a good resource. Okay. So in that book, the Präteritum is called the Imperfekt. Pretty much everywhere else that you look, it's going to be called the Präteritum. Okay? So especially if you're going on next year, Präteritum is the term that you should get to know. Okay? I often call it the one-word past tense. From here on out, PT stands for past tense, not physical therapy or something like that. Okay? So it's a one-word past tense. Why? Because you only use one word when you create it. Sometimes. Okay? When do you use it? When you are writing. So it is the written form of the past tense. So in other languages, it's determined by what the action is and stuff like that. And we have multiple kinds of past tenses in English, whether you realize that or not. Okay? In German, they're pretty cut and dry. When you're writing, you use the Präteritum. Okay? That's how you determine which form you use. Which is kind of nice. Okay? It's pretty cut and dry. Okay? One major thing about this one. Ich and es, just like the modals, conjugate the same. Okay. So an example of this one. Ich war. Let me try that. Ich war.
Ich war.
Any idea what that would mean? I was. Good. So if you're going to say he was, then you just say er war. That's it. Other than that, once you have the base form, so the ich or the es, that's the base of the word. So from there, you just add your regular endings to the rest of them. So du warst, wir waren, ihr wart, so on and so forth. Okay? So we'll get back into that one later. We're actually going to start with the harder one and work our way easier. Okay? So, Yasmin was very excited about that concept. Alright. So, here is form. Capitalized. If you lowercase it, it means perfect. Not the verb tense. Okay. So, the Perfekt. In English, by the way, this is called the, unfortunately named, I think, present perfect. Which I find very confusing, because it says present right in there, even though we're talking about the past tense, not the present tense. So I find that confusing. Okay? But present perfect is what the Perfekt is. Okay? So the other one was the one-word past tense. This one is the two-word past tense, which is good and bad. In some cases, it makes it easier than the other one, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. The other one was written. This one is spoken. So when you talk, this is what you would use. Okay. Now, there are some verbs, like var, for example. Even though it's the written form of the verb, they will frequently use var and the modal verbs, stuff like that. The preteritum form, they'll use when they're speaking. So there are some that kind of mix over into the other area. Okay, but on the whole, this is the one that you'd use when you're talking. Okay? So even in a book, if it's in past tense and you're going through and you're seeing all this preteritum, if there's a quote, then now they're saying that someone is speaking, so then it'll switch to the two-word. Does that make sense? All right. So, here are the two words. There are two parts to it. Okay. First one is the helping verb. There are two verbs in the German language I keep telling you have to master, you have to master, you have to master. Do you know what they are?
Two verbs.
Two verbs.
Is it der, ist, or the sein?
Sein is one of them, yeah? What's the other most common verb? Haben. There you go. Alright, so we've got sein and haben. Okay? Those are the ones that you're going to conjugate. And the reason that this makes it nice is that means the other word, once you learn what it is, will never, ever, ever, ever change. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. But these are the only two that you're going to conjugate. So once you know how to conjugate haben and sein, you're already most of the way there. Okay? So, the other one is called the past participle. Now the past participle, this is the one that once you learn what that past participle is, it will never, ever change. It's one of the few times that you can say that about something in a language. Okay? There's no exceptions to that rule. Okay? So once you learn what the past participle is for fahren, it will always be the same. You never change the ending on it. Nothing weird will happen to it. It's always the same. Okay? So that part's nice. Okay? Usually, instead of calling it a past participle, I call it a GE word. Because in most cases, and we're going to talk about that today, most cases, that past participle is going to have a GE at the beginning of the word. Okay. Now jot down, it never changes. So you don't conjugate it. Alright, that's how to create it. Alright, what's the verb to play? Spielen. Okay. Is spielen regular or irregular? Regular. Okay. So we're going to use spielen as an example of a regular verb. Okay. So regular verbs follow patterns, and irregular verbs follow some patterns. So if it's a regular verb, it conjugates normally in present tense. That's all we're trying to figure out. So like spielen or kaufen or brauchen or whatever. Okay? So you take the original verb, and we're going to work on creating our GE word. So take your verb. You're going to put a GE at the beginning. And you're going to get rid of that EN and put a T there. And the rest in the middle stays the same. And that's your GE word. Okay. So everybody try that one. Gespielt.
Gespielt.
Okay. So now whenever I'm doing past tense, I'll have my helping verb, I'll conjugate that, but that GE word, you will forever and ever know spielen is gespielt. It's never going to change. Okay? So let's do another one. So kaufen, we just said kaufen is a nice normal verb. What's my first step to create the GE word? Say again? Get rid of the EN, and what do I put there instead?
T.
A T. What else do I need to do? Add the GE at the beginning. And what goes in the middle? Kauf, the rest of the word. Okay? Yep. Just did. The GE words will always end in a T or an N. There's no other option. Because we haven't gotten to the ones that end in an N yet. These are just for regular verbs. Okay? Joy.
So would you need another verb in there to say like whether you're saying like I played or like I?
That'll be the helping verb,
Okay.
and we'll get there in a minute.
Do you capitalize the GE or
Nope. It's lowercase because it's a verb, not a noun. So it stays lower.
so then do you keep the cow capitalized or?
It was never capitalized.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So now we've got gekauft. How about, let's do another one here. Sammeln. What does sammeln mean? To collect, yes. Okay. What are my steps? Add a GE. And then? Now this one doesn't have any EN.
Is it just?
So you just get rid of the N. Yep. What do I put there instead? T. And then I fill in the middle with the rest of the verb. Okay, so gesammelt. Okay. Now, we'll do one more of the regular verbs and we'll move on. If you have a separable verb, like aufmachen. Anybody remember what aufmachen means? To open. Good. Where does it separate?
After the out.
After the auf. Okay, so doop. The same steps apply. The only thing that's different is that your GE is going to go where it separates. So there's no space in there anymore. The GE takes up that space. Okay. So, well, otherwise we'll follow through on the same steps. So we're just going to start with the auf. And then we have GE. And what do we need to do to machen?
Take off the en.
Take off the en and put a T. So then, aufgemacht. Okay. Now, you've actually already learned two verbs right there. You've got aufgemacht, because you jumped ahead and you already learned separable verbs. But you've also learned the past tense of machen. So it's gemacht. So once you learn the base word, you can just kind of keep adding the separable prefixes on at the beginning as necessary. Okay? So there's a lot more patterns to this. Is it making sense so far? Alright. Good. Next, we're going to go to helping verbs. Okay, and how to choose the helping verb. Helping verbs. Okay. So we said we had haben and sein. We're going to start with sein. Okay. But step one is to remember, conjugate this. So this is the part that Joy, you were asking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the thing that you conjugate for your main subject. Okay, so you conjugate this. All right. So option one was sein. We're going to go through how to use, or how to know when to use sein, and then we'll go through haben, when to use haben. Okay, so sein. You use sein as your helping verb if you are changing locations Okay, so verbs like to go and to run, stuff like that, to drive, you're changing locations. Okay? Now to be careful on this one, if you're playing soccer, for example, you're playing, but are you actually changing your location? No, because you're staying on the soccer field the whole time. So that location hasn't changed. Does that make sense? So you change locations, you use sein as your helping verb. Or, if you have a state of being change. I'll explain that in a second. State of being change. Okay.
Like you're about to go somewhere?
Say again?
Like you're about to go somewhere?
Nope. Even more drastic than that. Like, you're born. That's a drastic state of being change. You went from not being alive to being alive. Or you die. That's another drastic state of,
Would you use it to
You
say,
grow up. That's a state of being change. Okay, so it's not about minor things like,
Going somewhere?
yeah, because that would be a change of location. So you'd use sein for that one because you're going there. But it's not about going from one place to another. It's about you physically changing in some way.
So would you use it to say like I'm sick or I'm hot or something like that, or not really?
Then you would just say I was
Oh,
hot. So then the helping verb for sein is sein. So that works out nicely.
okay.
So you beat me to my next one. Okay, so changing locations, state of being change, and if it is sein. So I was sick. Okay. So being sick isn't a state of being change, but the verb that you're using would be. Okay. There are a few exceptions, and the exceptions are sometimes really strange. Like bleiben. What does bleiben mean? To stay. Why this one is an exception, I don't know. But when you use bleiben in past tense, the helping verb is sein, which is the exact opposite of what the rules are. Right? If you're changing locations, that's the rule, and yet to stay is a sein verb. Okay, but we'll get into those kinds of things. All right. Now, so step one is you figure out, is it sein? Okay. Haben you use for everything else. So you just need to figure out whether you would use sein or not. And if you don't, then you use haben. Okay? With me so far? Okay. Word order. Where does your verb go in a sentence normally? Second. Which one of those two words, the helping verb or the GE word, do you think is going to go second? Which one is going to go in the second position in the sentence?
The one you conjugate.
The one you conjugate. Hmm? So which one is that?
The helping.
Helping verb. Yeah. Okay, so normal word order for a sentence would be main subject. And you have your helping verb. Because the second spot is where your conjugated verb goes. Okay, so conjugate that. Okay. Then anything else that you need in the sentence. So it might be the word like soccer or today or with friends or whatever. And just like when you're using modal verbs and that other one gets kicked to the end, your GE word gets kicked to the end. Okay? So at the very end, you put your GE word. And remember, that one never, ever changes. Okay? Never, ever. Okay. So, let's do a few practice ones. Well, we'll just do one or two practice sentences, and then we'll get into questions and stuff.
Wait, what was the third one?
Anything else? Squiggle, like fill in the blank. You might not have anything else. If you were going to say, I played soccer. Oh, I know, that wouldn't work. I read. If you just said, I read, that'd be 3 words and you'd be done. But if you want to say a book, that would go where the squiggle is.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So, I played soccer. What's your first word? Ich. What goes next? Check out the thing you just wrote down about word order. Helping verb. Are we going to use haben or sein?
Haben.
Haben. Remember we talked about you stay on the soccer field, so you don't change locations. Okay, so ich, how do you conjugate it for ich?
Habe.
Habe. What comes next?
Gespielt.
Not yet. Squiggles.
Oh, yeah.
Fußball. So that's an example of the anything else. So even if you had something like I played soccer on Tuesday, the soccer on Tuesday all goes where the squiggle is. Okay? And then what goes at the end? Gespielt. Ich habe Fußball gespielt. Okay? What if we said he played soccer?
It's just the same way when you say
Er hat, and then Fußball and gespielt.
Oh, that's,
Do you see how that works?
yeah, okay. Yes, I see.
All right. Question word order. So creating questions. What goes first when you ask a question? Verb. Yep. You might have a question phrase, so we'll put that on here. So one of the W words. But that's optional. It may not be there at all. Okay. But otherwise, your verb. So which are we going to have, the helping verb or the GE word? Helping verb. Because again, it's the one you conjugate. So helping verb will go next. Or first if you don't have a question phrase. What has to go next to your helping verb? Main subject. Remember, that's the couple that are inseparable. You can't tear them apart. Okay. And then squiggles. Anything else? And at the end, GE word. Okay. So how would you ask, did you play soccer? Hast du, yeah, because you have your helping verb first. There you go. Hast du Fußball gespielt? So the thing that trips up most people is that did. Okay, so you just got to remember your helping verb covers that. Okay. Did you play soccer? It also means have you played soccer? All right. Irregular verbs. We're not going to do a whole lot with them today, okay, but I just want you to understand how they work. So there's regular verbs like gespielt. Okay, there's irregular verbs like we're going to do now, and then there's exceptions to everything. All right, so we'll get into those too. So irregular verbs. So irregular verbs are verbs that conjugate irregularly in present tense. Okay, so for example, laufen. The nice thing about these is that in past tense, they're easier than they were in present tense, which is weird. Okay? So, what were our 2 steps for regular verbs when you're creating your GE word? Add the GE and take it off the end and put a... Okay, we're going to cut that down. All you have to do is add a GE. And that's it. It's about time those paid off, right? Okay. So, gelaufen. That's your new GE word. Okay. What about fahren? What's that one going to be? Gefahren. Yeah, that's it. Does that make sense? So, he drove home. Okay. Start me off. What's your first word? Air. There we go. What's the verb to drive? Fahren. Okay. When you drive, do you change locations?
Yes.
Yes. So what's our helping verb?
Sein.
Sein. How do you conjugate it for er?
Is.
Ist. There you go. Everybody follow that process?
Yeah.
Okay. So er ist. Now we need 2 words for when you're going home. Not zu Hause, but nach Hause. What does zu Hause mean? At home. So er ist nach Hause. What's going at the end? Gefahren. Good. Let's do 2 more of those. We hiked in Germany. What's the verb to hike? Wandern. Good. Do you change locations when you hike?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Okay, otherwise you're standing in one spot. All right. So, start me off. What's your first word?
Wir.
Wir. Are we going to use haben or sein? Sein, because we just said we changed locations. How do you conjugate sein for wir? Sind. Sind. So wir sind. Then what?
Deutschland.
In, not im. That means in the. Okay, so in and then Deutschland. Now, wandern. Is it a regular verb or irregular? It's regular. So what's our GE word going to be? Gewandert. Okay. So is wandern. Got rid of the N. Left everything else alone. Added a T. Wir sind in Deutschland gewandert. Okay. One more. They bought a calculator. What is bought the past tense of? To buy. How do you say to buy? Kaufen. Okay. Do you change locations when you kauf? No, you do not. Okay. Start me off. What's your first word? Z. Big or little s? Why? Because it's the beginning of a sentence. Yeah. Z. So we've already said we aren't changing locations when you buy. So, haben. How to conjugate it for Z? Haben. Stays the same. Sie haben. We'll come back to the in a second here. We have a spot. What's the word for calculator? Rechner. Gut. Masculine, feminine, neuter, or plural? Masculine. Okay. Ends in an R. Probably the word. Yeah. Okay. What case is Rechner? Is it nominative, accusative, or dative? Oh, what's our main subject? They. What are they doing? Buying. What are they buying? It's accusative. Okay? They're not buying me a calculator or something like that. They're just buying the calculator. Okay? So, we've got accusative. We've got masculine, and we're looking for the word. Einen. Gut. Sie haben einen Rechner. And what do we need at the end?
Gekauft.
Gekauft. Gut. Gekauft. Okay? Good. So, what page should you be looking at right now?
330.
Richtig. Okay. You're going to be copying these down into your notes. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. Okay? But you might consider having a separate page so that you can start keeping track of your past tense verbs all together. Okay? So, you're going to have a couple columns. Okay, so again, Seite 335. Okay? So you don't need to write the page number, but just in case you forget it later. Okay, so, far left, you will write infinitive. You might want to wait to write until I go through the full thing so you know how to do your spacing. Okay? What does the infinitive mean? Infinitive.
Wow.
What is the infinitive?
I don't even know what it
That's why I'm asking you.
Beyond.
It's not to the infinitive and beyond. It's the original form of the verb. Okay?
The OG. That's original.
Okay. So you're going to have a column for the infinitive. So what's the very first one that they list? Is it Boston?
Yes.
Okay. So you would write Boston in there. I'll go through and I'll give you the example. So we'll do Boston. Okay. But again, don't start writing until we go through the full thing so you can do your spacing. So you will write Boston there. Not conjugated, nothing weird. Because I'm telling you that that's where it goes.
What you say?
If you look on your page, it's bolded, I think, right? Boston is the first bolded verb there. Yeah, so that's where it comes from. You're just going to go straight down that list. Okay.
Keep going, man.
Next we have the meaning. Because it's always good to know what they actually mean. Okay? They give you the meaning, don't they? Okay. To do crafts. So then you'd write that there. To do crafts.
That's a lot of work.
Okay? So again, you aren't writing yet because you need to know what else you need to do before you do your spacing stuff. Okay? Then we need to know the helping verb. You're only going to write down haben or sein. You're not going to conjugate anything because you don't have a subject to conjugate it for.
My bad.
Okay? So Boston is haben. Now if you look at your list, I think there's a little asterisk down below or something.
Yep.
What does that say?
Know that the
It tells you which one is
right.
Yeah. Reisen?
Yes.
It tells you which ones are sein. That's really all it is. Okay, so you don't have to brain yet. You don't have to think yet. Okay? You don't have to brain. So, if you look at the list, you should find an asterisk next to, I think it's 2 of them. Okay, so Reisen, what was it? Wandern?
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay, so you only have 2 of them that say sein. Okay, so you know that now. Okay, so the rest of them, you will fill in haben. Okay. Then the last thing, you need to know what your GE word is. Okay? If you know, all of those verbs are regular. Every last one of them. Which means, what letter is every single one of these going to end in? A T. Okay? Be careful for the ones, I think Kosten is in the list. Is that right?
Yeah.
When you have something like Kosten, and you get rid of the EN, you have a T there. You have to add an E before your T. Okay, so watch out for those. So like Kosten and Warten or things like that. So, past tense for basteln is gebastelt. Okay, so you go through and you do that for each of those verbs. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So, once you've got them all done, I'd number them, just makes it easier. So that you make sure you got them all. Once you've got them all done, show me. I will mark you off with some points. Okay? Fragen? Ethan? If you don't finish it during class today, which you very well could, you should finish it in class. You have 13 minutes. Then it is homework. But I would expect everybody to get done in class. So again, best if you number it. Makes things easier. You should have 36 total.